which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Before I open the meeting for public comments, I just wanted to apologize to the public for not being here last Monday and Tuesday. I had a health condition that popped up on Monday, and all better, saw the doctor on medicine, it's clearing, so I'm good, but I apologize because I really do try and structure my life so that I do not miss meetings. Also, we have a hard stop at 3:30 today. We are interviewing potential police officers. The police academy, which runs once every year or so on average, is starting next week, and with an potential retirement or expected retirement coming up in the next year or so. It takes 6 months for a police officer to get through the police academy, and then another 2 minutes with training on site before they are ready to go and work on their own. So that's 8 months in total. So we're starting interviews now because we have 3 good local candidates who are at the top of the list that we don't want to lose potentially to Suffolk County or some other local police department. So we're starting that process today. So I wanted to just let the public know what is going on, but also that we do have a hard stop. So and when even though I was out on Monday and Tuesday, I did go back and watch the tapes. So we can't have an hour of public comment today, just because we've got stuff to get through. But it doesn't look like we have the same turnout today, so hopefully that won't be an issue. But I just wanted to preface before we get started with public comments. So is there anyone in the physical audience that wishes to make a public comment? Okay, anybody in the Zoom audience? Okay, all right, that went faster than expected. So we will move on to the dot code legislation. And we have Claire Garrity and Matt Williamson from the Water Management Advisory Committee to speak to us on the proposed legislation.
Good afternoon, board members, Stephen and Tina. I'm Bill Garrity, chairman of the Waterways Management Advisory Committee, and Matt Williamson, who's the deputy chair, is also with me today. We're here to once again review questions that you've raised regarding the proposed Chapter 53 revisions. I've gone through and reviewed previous work sessions that you've had and questions that the town board raised during those work sessions regarding definitions and provisions. So I'd like to address those today. I also put that in a memo form, and Christina's circulated that to everyone. The first definition that I took note of from that had come up was for private docks. So the current definition town code is a dock utilized by the owner or occupant for pleasure vessels and or recreational purposes. The phrase and or recreational purposes has been removed from the proposed revisions, and that's since it's not a reason for allowing a private dock to be built. Under New York law, and I provided a number of cases to each of you and to Stephen to review, as well as a law review article was actually prepared by a law firm. A dock is to provide reasonable access to navigable water. So once access to navigable water has been shown to be reasonably accomplished and the dock is built, then the owner can use the dock for recreational purposes or what other, any other purposes. But it cannot be built for those other purposes alone. The other change to that definition, which we prepared following comments by the town board, town attorney, was to add not only pleasure, it reads now pleasure vessels can be maintained at private dock. We added and commercial fishing vessels. Actually, this came up last night at the Waterways meeting, and committee, after bouncing this around a bit, would like to revise it even further to read and resident-owned commercial fishing vessels to be maintained at private docks. So I've submitted that change to Steve. It would continue that other commercial vessels would be prohibited, and that is to be kept at private docks, and that is to prevent commercial operations in residential areas. The other definition that came up was commercial vessel. And so that would be changed to read a boat or vessel from which the owner obtains any income before it read any substantial income. So a boat or vessel from which the owner obtains any income or is documented or registered as a commercial vessel, either in New York or through the U.S. Coast Guard. And we added, or the operation of which requires a U.S. Coast Guard license. And that's really to address the fact that when you register or document a vessel, you don't necessarily register it or document it as either pleasure or private or commercial vessel. It just gets documented or registered. It's really the use of the vessel that determines whether it's a commercial vessel or not, and that would then require a license from the Coast Guard. So if you are carrying passengers for hire, for example, you would have to have a Coast Guard license. There's specific licenses for different sizes of boats. And for hire is pretty broadly defined. It could be any sort of compensation or consideration. For example, if you are carrying patrons to a restaurant, not necessarily getting paid with the restaurant, if it's the restaurant's vessel, then it's considered for hire. So that's how that came up and why we addressed that issue. Next one is definition of pleasure vessel came up. This was not changed from the original code, but as it reads, all boats or vessels other than government, commercial, or institutional. And it was raised by board members that, what do you mean by institutional, or what does the code mean by institutional? So what I would add to that definition is such as not-for-profit organizations, schools, and research facilities. That's basically that's the definition. Code sections that came up that town board had mentioned they wanted to get some clarity on was the proposed 53-12 C1, and that's always been referred to as the 15% rule. As it currently reads under the code, at mean low water, a private dock may not extend into the waterway farther than the equivalent of 15% of the shortest distance at mean low water from the shoreline where the dock is located to the opposite shoreline. That, in practice, has been a difficult provision to apply because it's fairly ambiguous. One of the major problems is identifying where on the shoreline you would take your measurements. And applicants would use different points along the shoreline and then take their measurement at different angles from that point. So not even where the dock was going to be located and not directly to the other shoreline, but taking advantage of, 45-degree angle in that direction or that, another direction to get the longest distance to provide for the large dock. And that has created, some issues in various tight. This gets employed in tight areas where we've got opposing shorelines. The purpose of this provision is to maintain a navigable channel in those site-like conditions. And when I first was picking this apart, I was trying to understand why 15% as opposed to 10 or 20 or some other percentage, and I played with all different numbers. It turns out that 15% does make sense, and I'll spare you all the different mathematics that went into that. But what the real focus is here is to maintain a channel that's wide enough to permit boat traffic, not impede navigation. That's why we added the 40-foot minimum channel, width of channel provision. And 40 feet, that number came up because it's the rule employed by most marinas to maintain a fairway that is 1.5 times the length of the boats that are maintained in that area. So since typically smaller boats are maintained in these tighter areas, say 25 up to 25 or 30 foot boats, 1.5 times would get you to about 40 feet. And then in playing with the math in different locations, the 40 feet really does make sense. So I had done a hand-drawn example of, you know, the situation we're trying to avoid. That's in A, and where you would have opposing shorelines.
Hold you for a second. Christine, are you able to display this, or do we only have it in print? Keep going, please.
Hand-drawn.
It's very, very helpful. I
Yeah.
appreciate
I mean,
that.
Christina did a really nice, I don't know how she did it, it's beyond me, but she did it on the computer.
Don't quit your day job.
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, what you see in A basically is a simplified depiction of a situation that we want to avoid. That's where you have opposing shorelines and you're just building docks that, you know, could be up to 100 feet based on the code. So you have to have some limitations there. B is applying the new rule where the measurements are taken from the location of the dock on the shoreline. And might be the time for me to read this entire rule as we've drafted it. It's a little cumbersome to follow, but let me read through it. A mean low water or private dock may not extend into the waterway farther than the equivalent of 15% of the distance at mean low water from the point on the shoreline where the dock is located to the closest point on the opposite shoreline. Measurements are to be taken at a point where the proposed dock intersects the shoreline, in other words, where it's located, and over a 90-degree arc with the proposed dock at the center of the arc. So you see in that diagram B, we've taken measurements that cover a full 90 degrees, 45 in each direction, looking for the shortest distance, a channel of minimum of 40 feet and a minimum of depth of 2.5 feet. At mean low water shall be maintained between the terminus of the proposed dock and any existing or future chapter compliant dock located or potentially located on the opposite shoreline. So you see in that example, you've got at B, you've got 120 feet as the shortest distance. 15% of that is an 18-foot dock. You then impose your 40-foot channel, and you can see that it provides a nice even channel down the middle of that fairway. The bottom one, C, is an example of the kinds of things we've been presented with, where it looks like you're taking the shortest measurement to the opposite shoreline. In that lot number 1 where the dock is proposed, but it's not where the dock is located. That distance would permit you to put in a 100-foot dock, the maximum size dock. But when you put it in that location, it then impedes what can be done on lots 2 and 3. So that's the purpose of the rule, is to overcome situations like that. I'll wait till the end before if you want to have any questions about that. The last item that I had noted was regarding Article 2, town-owned docks. I think it was Amber had was looking at my proposed 53-85, and then what was drafted by Bo were rules and regulations that basically cover the same topics, but to be maintained outside of the code to give us more flexibility. And she felt that, or was pointed out that a lot of the issues or basically whoever, the town clerk, whoever was going to be in charge of this process, identified in 53-85, she didn't see how that was reflected in Bo's rules and regulations. So I submitted all that to Bo for his review and his response. He points out that in his rules and regulations, under Condon Creek rules and regulations, all of those items are covered. They're just not in one place. They're covered under required information, permit issuance, renewals, and change of vessel. So all the town clerk's roles remain the same in those proposed changes. And I will spare you reading through all those provisions, but that is that's what I picked up and what I want to go over today. Have other
So the drawings really helped clarify the text for me because I was having trouble picturing exactly what you were describing until I saw the different scenarios and then it made complete sense.
great. Yeah, trying to reduce it to words.
Is a challenge. Especially when you have abnormal coastlines and things like that. So in my head, I was working through scenarios going, I'm not sure exactly what he's referring to, but that made it crystal clear.
Good. The other,
Just 1 second.
Mhm. Oh, okay, yeah, just as a sidebar. Okay, yeah, why don't we move that to the end, the bulkhead repair fee? That was something we sent back to you all. We'll finish
Discussed it
this.
last night, but.
Yeah, we'll finish this. We'll just, when we finish with this piece, we'll bounce to that, so you don't have to stay to the end of the meeting.
okay. Any other?
Well, I had one thing, when I was talking to Pep about our wetlands code, it came up that they're working on trying to make an easier, smoother pathway for homeowners to or living shoreline type of options rather than hard bulkheading and things like that. So I wanted to make sure that that's kind of incorporated here in our code. And I feel like it kind of fits under the water-related structure definition because that includes a structure other than a dock, including but not limited to bulkheads, piles, buildings, piers, wharf, jetty, groin, dolphin, dike, dam, or other structure, any part of which is embedded in or attached to land below water or within the limits of the foreshore. So like if someone were gonna go into that area and let's say add a combination of boulders and plantings and different types of hardening, but not necessarily hardening, would that be included in this kind of definition? It would go through the same kind of review process as a bulkhead, for example. I just want to make sure we have some kind of allowance for people to come to us with those types of applications if they become if they become easier to get through the DEC processing in the future. I don't know if we really consider that.
Yeah, the definition is very broad because it says a structure other than a dock, including but not limited to, so
Right,
it's endless.
that's right, yeah.
So it's, arguably in character with what's listed, so I would say that you're all right.
Yeah, we would really invite people we had an application last night that chose to go with boulders as opposed to bulkhead,
Right,
which is a much better approach for many reasons. So yeah,
okay, good. I just wanted to make sure we weren't silent on it or we somehow incorporated that concept.
And that suggestion came from DEC, if I remember correctly.
I think, no, it was Ed Consultants who actually came up with the idea, and they weren't sure if the DEC how they would respond to it. The DEC, they gave them both choices, the bulkhead and the boulders, I believe that's the way they presented it. And the DEC came back and said, yeah, if they're willing to go, if the homeowner's willing to go through that expense, I think it's a more expensive process. And they said that they would definitely appreciate that, so that's the way they went.
It has been since June that we last reviewed this, and then it went back
Mhm.
for review. So I have so many notes, comments, edits on different things. I'm trying to figure out how to give you direction to like clean up this draft and bring it back to us for.
Yeah, I would love, so I've been working with Bill, and Matt, of course, has been instrumental. You know, so, I already have notes and changes, and a lot of it's de minimis. The substantive changes, Bill brought back to the WMAC. So if you want to get me your notes, and then I'll, you know, cross that with what I got. And if I feel anything's of substance that you're proposing, then we may have to bring Bill back in and
Mhm.
to the WMAC. But if it's just, again,
No, most of them I felt I brought up at the, prior discussions.
okay, so,
So I just
yeah, so if
trying
you
to figure
could,
out how to make sure they all get incorporated.
so get your notes to me, and then I'll redraft it and we'll put it on for a work session to discuss.
Okay. How do the rest of you feel about that?
That's
That's
okay
fine.
with me.
That's fine. I think we hit the substance stuff last night at WMHC with the
Mhm.
definitions. So I think
Mhm.
that's fine.
Okay.
I have a whole bunch of notes.
Yeah, I was gonna say, so we'll all give you our notes.
Yes.
Feel. Okay,
Perfect.
do that. Okay, all right.
And you'll let me know.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, so no more vacations until I,
Great.
the notebook shop.
So, you want to get?
Okay, so yes, so the fees that was sent back.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
I guess the town clerk had some questions. She has some applications in for repair of bulkhead, and the fee structure wasn't clear. But we probably didn't, I don't even think it's addressed. And, well, the new fee structure calls for that $5,000 fee, and then the bit up front, and then the rest
Mhm.
later. But we want to encourage bulkhead repair, and we don't want to make it a punitive activity. So the WMAC is looking for, I guess, input from us as to how we want to approach fees for repairing bulkheads. Is that right, Albert? Is that close?
Yes.
Okay.
From a perspective, typically we hear about fees that the town boards put in place, mooring fees and then dock fees. And then we respond.
Mhm.
We've never discussed bulkhead fees, or we've never heard about bulkhead fees. So what I had mentioned to Ben last night is that there's a schedule of fees that's being proposed or that's in place. We'd love to see them and give whatever input we would have. I mean, the difference with, one of the primary differences with bulkheads versus docks is that virtually every bulkhead is a repair. I can't remember the last time a new bulkhead was installed. I don't think in the 15 years I've been doing this. So typically it's a repair. It's in place. It's not in kind because the updated bulkheads are vinyl and not wood. Love to see people use boulders, but that's a whole other issue. But so from a permit fee perspective, like Benj pointed out, we would like to see it as the most manageable fee for individuals, because we want to promote that they fix those bulkheads as soon as possible. One goes, and then it impacts the neighbor on either side of them, so it becomes a real can become a domino effect. So whatever you have on it,
Repair
just,
fee for a dock. It would be like the equivalent of the repair fee for a dock.
And why this came about is I think Amber had gotten a bulkhead application, for repair, and she didn't know what fee structure, because we had recently addressed the dock repair fees, and since it's on the same application, that's what caused the
So we
question.
didn't address the bulkhead issue.
Yes, exactly.
the bulkhead repair is a more painful experience for a homeowner than getting a new dock, it's just.
Okay, so we will go back and just take a look at those.
All right.
Is that good?
Yes.
Thank
Is that
you.
it?
Thanks. You're off the hook.
Yes, for now.
Be free. And for that. Yeah. So as I said, I did go back and watch the meeting. Try not to reiterate anything that you all brought up. For chapters 1 and 2, so we can move on to 3 and 4. Question, just who is tracking the changes? It wasn't specifically discussed, it kind of seemed like maybe you were, but I don't know if we want to
I
put that
was, but
on
only
you.
specific changes that were listed, not concepts or ideas. So-
Yeah, because I feel like it's not fair to just put it on one board member, we should even,
Okay.
you know.
We can
Yes.
do different chapters.
Yeah, or, ask, like 1 and 2, we've already done, 3 and 4, we'll start working on today, but getting them to Coco, who was the committee clerk, to maybe sit in and track them, or we give her our changes to incorporate and just.
So our changes are suggestions, or we're not really agreeing to them now?
Right, well, I
mean-
have I have edits.
Right, I have
Like-
edits as well.
Yeah,
Okay.
and
And
you
then I
all
have
picked up on
some-
some too last.
Okay,
And
all
then
right.
also some wording changes, like I know we're gonna go back and look for some paragraph
Yeah, that I
rewrites
rewrote.
and things. So I want a process for how we manage pulling those all together and then coming back and agreeing to what gets incorporated when it goes back to the consultants. So I'll check and see if Coke has the bandwidth at the moment to step back in and sit in on the meetings, or if we pull somebody else in to
Okay,
do that. So
what do we do for today, though?
just keep track of them in our notes, and then we will have to have us, sit down with whoever is going to be doing that. So that was just a sort of a process comment that I had from last week. As far as my comments, so I got them all over the place. This is more of a question for you, Stephen. In the cover and throughout the document, we have photographs of specific businesses, residences, people. Do we need to get permission from people to have their images or their businesses or properties?
I would say yes, that's something I'd have to research, but off the top of my head, I would say yes. And I think it's good practice to do that even if we didn't need their permission. As far as public property and public land, that's fine.
Going. I know you raised a question about why is this needed, and I did think it was to show the community, the vast community input that was reached. However, I did find numerous spelling mistakes in people's names, like Jan
Yeah.
Sudala, your name is misspelled in the document. Catherine Grigioni, like I know who she is, so I know her name is spelled, and I don't think there's a Greg Hanford and a Gregory Cranford. So I think we just need to ask people to look at the draft. If you're in here and participated, double check and make sure your name is spelled correctly.
My comment about the list was just because whatever the final product is,
Mhm.
having that list there implies that all those people participated and agree with the final draft. And I'm not sure that's the case.
Okay, then we can reword that, because it's all people who participated and shared their thoughts, visions, and ideas. Put a disclaimer in there, but that does not necessarily.
Disclaimer will be helpful.
Mhm.
Well, this is just thanking the members who attended at least one of the public workshops. So it's Thank people for participating in the process.
Yeah, but we can still add it to the deadline.
That would be good, because the impression is, that might be the case, but the impression is also the other thing.
Mhm. In the table of contents, John Kerr, I think it was at the very last CPAC meeting, did make a comment about moving natural resources and water quality up to chapter 4. So we'd have the introduction of vision, growth, change, and demographics, existing built environment, land use, and zoning, and then the natural resources and water quality, because we want to highlight that that is one of our most important resources. So,
Yeah, I mean, the reason the committee didn't go for that,
okay, yeah, I was gonna say, was
Was
there a reason
because-
for the
yeah,
order?
because the existing built environment talks about the land use and zoning, it goes into current housing, it goes into the demographics of our housing. So then it just kind of made sense to follow that with the housing plan and the economy. And then that way you can kind of see all the building blocks. If you put the natural resources right after the land use and zoning, then by the time you get into the housing chapter, it's a lot of going back to the beginning to reference. So it just kind of made more sense this way.
Just keep that thought in mind as we go through.
I mean, it's definitely not based on a importance or, you know, a ranking system of that nature. It's just how things flow.
Okay, big picture, on page 9. Adopting the comprehensive plan is important for several reasons, provides a clear vision, and says this new plan outlines Shelter Island's vision for the future. And one of the things that struck me is I don't think that what we've done so far, and I don't have the answer right now as we continue to go through the chapters, I've been like caught in the weeds, and so I want to go there. But I feel like we need to synthesize from all of the chapters, what is the vision that this document is providing? And I feel like that's lacking.
See, this is a summary piece for the 115 action items.
Mhm.
And I don't think we can really fully comment and edit this until we get to the end.
Right, yeah, exactly. But it's something that I want to keep forefront as we go through this, because I do want to try and come up with what is the vision this is saying, you know, like, what are our priorities? You know, protecting
I
the
think-
environment, managing development. I don't think we specifically like put it together in one little place.
Yeah, the vision statement is important. I think it's thin as it exists now. It's kind of the thesis statement and then everything goes back to it.
So that's one thing. Let's keep looking.
Found something else. Can't remember, what was that one?
Yeah, and the same thing with sort of a framework for decision making, like we sort of have that in chapter 11, but just, again, maybe a summary statement, open and close with. It's just a comment for myself as I continue to go through, trying to do big picture stuff. Yeah, I'm just making notes for like what I'd want to put into that. Oh, just a nit, this document is divided on page 10.
Yeah, 11
11
chapters,
and-
4
And
appendices.
4 appendices. I think Ben might have heard, no, I don't know, maybe it's a different one. The implementation matrix, we have not included the expected expense.
No, we
So I-
didn't, because it varies significantly depending on the scope of the work you
Yeah.
choose to do.
So I think we need to take that out here.
Yeah.
It's just, you know, an edit.
What it has is an anticipated, like, project cost. So it's like $1 sign is not that expensive, $5 signs is multi-million-dollar project. So it does it that way, it doesn't put a solid dollar amount on, but it does say, you know, kind of an anticipated expense rating. Or at least it did unless it got.
No, it got cut because it's difficulty.
Oh, we did it with difficulty instead of
Yeah.
expense, but yeah, that works. Okay.
Oh, I was just curious, because in stage, on page 12, stage 2, we had 12 draft chapters. Now we have 11, so I was just curious what chapter went away. I meant to go
Well-
back and check.
Chapter 12 was the implementation, for instance. Oh, there was a government chapter that then
Oh.
got incorporated into other chapters.
Okay.
That's why it, yeah.
The comment was made to move the vision and guiding principles up ahead of the sort of
History.
history and process, so I like that idea, so, yep, you know, like, let's definitely make sure that this works, that, you know, what happens. Yeah, I've got some nits, but I'll give those to whoever is gonna do those. As far as scoping, when we think about the environmental impact review, I didn't see anything in chapter 1 that has to go into being looked at, you know, being added to the scope. And actually, on that topic, the same for chapter 2. Yeah. Moving to chapter 2, I don't want to like drag you guys through this for too long.
Take your time.
Yeah. Oh, the population,
Yeah.
yeah.
The weird-
yeah.
Just population should
Yeah,
just say
chapter
growth
18.
rate has consistently outpaced.
Yeah, well, there was also, you had mentioned
In the first paragraph.
in the first paragraph,
Talk about
shelter
receded.
year-round, about what?
No, you go, sorry.
Oh, no, it's just, how many kids came and left since COVID, adding that. And then there was some other comment about adding some data, but it wasn't really data, it was more anecdotal. And so I just want to be careful about, I mean, there are instances in here where I think it's anecdotal information, but I don't want to, like, add too much that's not true data.
So part of it too is that these are just like short summaries and then they're expounded on in the chapter itself. So enrollment, the school enrollment and the COVID impact to that is discussed a little bit. in
Yeah,
the
and
chapter
that's,
that
and that's actual data from the school.
Right, so I don't know that we need to.
Yeah, no, I was just,
to read all.
I just made a note when I was watching the tape about adding something about, you know, other changes in the population, you know.
Well, it says
well.
that it increased because of COVID, which triggered the influx, but, you know, we're way past COVID now, so we actually know what happened as far as it receding.
Mhm.
So
Yeah,
that
so we should-
was
yes.
my comment.
Yeah, no, and I was good with that piece, I just, there was some other comment, I can't remember, I didn't write down what the comment was, I just made a note, like, oh, do we want to add anecdotal data? And I think it had more to do with maybe people who retired here, but we don't have any way of really gauging that.
Right.
Like, we have a sense that we know more people are now here and retired early or are working remotely, but we don't have hard
Yes.
data.
Like, and there's a lot of that, like 3 and 4.
Mhm. On page 18, the town's population is getting older. The discussion about comparing, you know, it's both Shelter Island and Suffolk County or comparing to other towns, why don't we just stick with Shelter Island has experienced and not reference the county?
I give that comment.
I think that's good in some of the charts we compare to Suffolk County or put that down, and we're really not
Mhm.
very similar to Suffolk County at large. The demographics were very different.
But we're part of Suffolk County, so it's kind of good to see how the county's changing as a whole compared to how the East End towns are changing.
So let's, as we go through the
Yeah.
charts, why don't we take a look to see whether or not it adds value or doesn't?
I think in
add value?
comparison, this town similar to Shelter Island would be effective.
Do it on a chart-by-chart basis.
Yes, that's what I'm thinking. I also wouldn't mind looking at like the American Community Survey, the ACS, and like heard your comment, you know, they do just extrapolate from trends that they've seen. But since we are using 2021 data, I wouldn't mind looking at
Yeah.
the 2022 data and pulling it just to see whether or not it is worthwhile to try and incorporate some of that, so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The ACS estimates are gonna be available in September
Okay.
this year. Next month,
Yeah, you said something like that.
time flies.
And that would be for 2022, for 2023.
23, 24.
Meg, do the boards still exist? The boards from the
Yeah,
sessions?
yeah, they're all in storage.
I rewrote the paragraph and I stuck it on that board.
Oh,
Okay.
Where are they?
I have digital scans of all of them, photographs of everything.
Okay,
I
great.
suspect Coco knows where they are.
And
too.
Coco has the hard copies in the bottom of the assessor's office in the basement.
Okay.
All right. Just making because that was back on page 19, the school enrollment. You wanted to say something more here? Is that the one you were writing?
Rising student costs.
Yeah, I'm trying to, remember. It was, I remember you saying you were gonna look for it, but I can't remember
Oh,
what paragraph it was.
Oh, it was chapter one.
Oh, chapter
I
one.
was back in chapter one.
Okay.
But if I can find it, if she had digital scans, I can find it. I don't have to reinvent it.
Mhm. Yeah.
So I will do that.
Okay, yeah, it was the maintain a vibrant community that meets residents' economic, because you said it doesn't, ignores non-full-time residents.
Mhm.
Okay, all right, good. Is there any way on page 21 to get a crisper chart of the population change, chart one?
Page?
Yeah.
Oh, page 1.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So just page before that, or two,
Mhm.
the school enrollment continues fall. I asked the question, do we want to couple this with the rising per student costs because of the population drop? Or do we want to not point that out?
In my mind, it's just a math. It's like, it's
I mean,
just
it's
math.
obvious.
Yeah, I mean, it's just
If
math.
fewer
so-
students and the budget doesn't change, so the student
Right.
cost goes up.
Yeah,
And I'm just asking the question, I wasn't.
yeah, no, I mean, when you said it, I just, you know, I just went straight to math, but it's just. This, I don't know.
Ben, you didn't
Does
put
it-
it on the poster board. Nope.
Yes, it was a sticky.
The sticky that's on the poster board said the island needs a full environmental review. That doesn't, I saved all the sticky notes. I took a photo of.
Oh, no, it's not sticky, it was.
A handwritten comment?
I'll send it to you. You
It
can
looks
look
like
at
my
it.
handwriting.
Yeah, it does look like your handwriting, but it doesn't correct the paragraph.
Well, send it to me, and if not, I'll just have to rewrite it.
Yeah, I'll send it to you.
Table 2, that's just whether or not we can get the information to update, since it's 2017 to 2021 is the latest breakdown. Especially, you know, the year-round population number, that was the one, that was like most likely to be incorrect at this point.
Chart 2, I didn't make this comment before, but looking at it again yesterday, shows decline.
Wait, which page is chart 2 on? Oh, there it is,
Are
sorry.
you
it's
on
not-
page
it's-
21?
Page
22.
Yeah. Yeah, I just realized.
I
it
just
says
wondered if you have to
22.
explain the decline, or it's kind of explained later in other chapters, but. It's like, yeah. I mean, it's a complicated equation.
You mean explain the decline for,
Households. It's kind of dealt with, because almost every chapter feeds into that,
Mhm.
so. I'm sure it's a helpful comment.
I'm trying to think, where would you incorporate? I'm also just looking to see where chart 2 gets referenced.
In the paragraph above. It's kind of described.
Oh, okay, so it's not called out.
No, and it defines family household, it's not, so it just,
Mhm.
and then there's the census data that pulled from.
Since it's not referenced by chart, maybe we do want to like, okay, this in the text, in the body of the text.
It's explained on page 23. I mean, to speculate why it's changing, why we have a reduction, would be challenging, and I'm not sure.
Because everything
Right.
feeds into it, but.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, it is just existing conditions.
Right.
Chart 10, maybe looking to update that one as well.
Students with economic disadvantage, that chart. Sorry, page 26.
Yes. Yeah, just whether or not we update it for 2022. Oh, page 17. Is page 17 or it's page 19?
Yeah, one of the things I noticed is that some of the references don't refer back to the correct page anymore
Yeah.
because of the way it's edited, but I figured with the final to clean all that up.
Yes. Okay, so page 19. Household income has grown, but poverty has increased significantly. And it references the Great Recession.
Oh, it
From
also
2000
came up in paragraph, chapter 4 as well, the
Okay.
Great Recession.
But yeah, which goes back to 2007, 2009.
I would think the Great Recession was the early 90s.
Well, so I mean, is it something that we need to be referencing at this point in time? Like, it just seems old. So,
And confusing.
yeah, I would,
That's how old we are.
yeah, I would take it out. I mean, unless there was a reason it went in, or this is
Well,
sort
because
of.
it's doing by decade, so that's every 10 years they do a census, so our reference points are 2010, 2020. So if there was a recession right before 2010, and that's the census benchmark,
During the Great, and it's not where is it defined here?
Great
'Cause
Recession.
I couldn't find it when I missed this one. I caught the one in chapter 4,
Mhm,
and I
yeah.
couldn't find a definition for it. But like I said,
Oh,
for me,
yeah, but-
Yeah, I
it was
feel-
91 when we were out of school, we were all working, and then the recession hit, and everybody went upside down on their mortgages, and
Right, it was 07,
07, 08.
08. It was 07, 08,
I
09.
was fine through that one.
It was only a little blip.
For you, for some people, it could have been
Yeah.
significant.
mhm.
No, yeah.
That's why it wasn't the Great Recession for me.
It was rough.
The 91 was the Great Recession for me.
Oh, keep that on my personal list of things to continue to consider. Yeah, that was it. So now we can go on to chapter 3.
No, I got it. Yeah, I think I mentioned it. Yeah, what's this? Okay.
So starting with page 29. I didn't have anything until,
I had an initial comment
Mhm.
that I thought this perhaps could be the most important chapter in the comprehensive plan. And it largely describes history and current data. And it doesn't really get into land use. They're kind of scattered through the whole plan. I don't know if they should be more condensed. I know that's a broad criticism, but it's largely current use and data, that's all.
Well, it's the existing condition. It's the existing land use conditions and how we got to where we are. Because then the rest of the document is how we move forward.
I feel we have to come back to this chapter because there is so much,
Yeah,
you know, that comes from all the other chapters if you go to page.
right,
I mean, the zoning is included in it, and that is extremely important.
right.
Yes.
But the zoning, the different zoning changes aren't included in this chapter because it's the existing conditions chapter. They're included in like the housing chapter, the economy chapter, natural resources. It tells you what chapters to look in for specific zoning recommendation. This is just giving you your baseline of where your current zoning is and how we've gotten to where we are and what it currently looks like. So it's not supposed to list changes
Well,
to
that's the
zoning.
idea, of how it was done, to not do that, but you could list all the changes
But
in
it
this
doesn't make
chapter, the
sense to do
zoning
that, because
changes.
then they're outside of the context of the rest of the chapter that they do.
And the comprehensive plan just provides a justification for zoning changes, so you're not gonna have the exact zoning changes. You might have action items that are close to what, but it's really not meant, provide verbatim zoning changes.
Doesn't write legislation.
Well, it justifies legislation you want to write later.
Correct.
So the decision that has to be made now is, do you want to open a door to a certain type of legislation or not?
Correct. So you wanna make sure the justification is there for zoning amendments you want, not there for ones you don't.
Or make sure that it's not there.
Yeah, that sounds.
We're on page, starting on 42, we do have paragraphs that speak to each of the chapters where the zoning changes are coming from. So is it like, would it be helpful then to expand upon the descriptions here a little bit rather than referencing?
I just think rather than have them scattered through the whole plan, it would be more concise and easier to digest for people to see them listed. That's all.
Well, they're kind of listed at the end in the implementation matrix and in every chapter.
Is that all the changes proposed?
Yes. The implementation matrix is everything. It's all of for each chapter, it goes through the goals and then all the recommended actions
Okay.
for each chapter. It's in chapter 11. So it's like a summary of the entire document.
But it incorporates more than just zoning changes.
Right, it has everything.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like on 43, this chart has the list of all the zoning changes.
Right.
So it I guess my question to you, Albert, is do you want to beef up what's on page 43?
Let's go through it. Let's go through the plan. I thought that this is a zoning chapter. That's how I considered it. I thought it doesn't really have the meat that it should have. That's all.
I guess my question is, what meat are you looking for that's not included? What is it not providing
Let
that
me-
you want to see?
Let me go through the plan completely.
Okay.
Great, thank you.
I have a more general comment about this chapter, which we can come back and talk about and address. It has to do with its tone. I'm making notes here, like the first 3 paragraphs are great. 4th paragraph launches into this thing about land conservation is great, but it's caused these problems and has made the island an oasis for the wealthy, and it says that. But that's not the only reason. The world in general there are a whole bunch of circumstances that have changed the economy of this island, not just land preservation. In fact, it's a really, really, really small part of it. The wording in that paragraph, I think we need to work on.
Are you paragraph 4?
The 4th paragraph,
Page
Fourth,
30.
okay.
Oh.
Land conservation?
30 and 31. And it has to do with the tone of this whole chapter, but,
And do you have a recommended change?
yes.
I don't think, with regard to that, I mean, it calls out Mashonack and Gardner's Bay. They can be sold.
Yeah,
They're buildable land.
No, so Mashonack is part of the town's parks program. It was put into the town park program in 1999. So it is protected.
it's not.
I'm afraid of that thing, frankly. I just think Mashonack can be sold and built, and Gardner's Bay can be sold.
Gardner's Bay, absolutely. I think Mashonack has far more red tape.
Well, it might, yeah, and the
Yeah,
name.
no, I'm just talking about
Like-
the numbers.
Business.
Yeah, it's not gonna get sold. But I don't see, where's Gardner's Bay on here? I see Sylvester Manor
Where did I see it? I saw it
has a higher
someplace.
chance of being
I
developed.
don't remember now, I saw it someplace.
Well, 100, I don't know the exact number, but over 100 acres of Sylvester Manor is preserved in perpetuity. The other part of it, not so much, but also another organization that's not in the business of selling and developing property, but over 100 acres of Sylvester Manor has the development rights have been sold to the county and state. So these, by the way, these charts, I don't think they're right. I mean, we should look at them again. I think they include things like the manor, Gardner's Bay.
So before we jump there,
Yeah.
so what recommended change did you have for the 4th paragraph? For the 4th key finding?
Well, it should be, well, specifically, I can write that up for you tonight, but the fact that we're conserving property, because the property that is conserved is a very small portion of available land on this island, it's not gonna make this an outpost for just the wealthy. But we should talk about how preserving property is a good thing for the feel of Shelter Island and the experience of Shelter Island, in addition to protecting the environment. And if anything, it's really the town's obligation and duty to create housing opportunities for residents. And that's not mentioned here at all. Because that's how you fix the problem. That's one of the challenges that you're stating here, and the answer is the town needs to be more proactive. And
So the sentence that you're having trouble with is, at the same time, protecting open space and limiting growth can further drive up prices and restrict access to the island to all but the wealthy. The town should continue to be selective in its open space preservation efforts by focusing on locations of special importance based on their natural resource value, visual and historic significance. So it's the first portion of that.
The first portion, and it's missing in the last portion, which is to address the challenge, the town needs to be more proactive in creating affordable housing for people. So that piece is missing altogether, and you know, what's driving up costs and prices is land preservation is a fraction of it. So this is kind of blaming it all on that.
If you can come up with a rewrite, that would be good.
Happy to. Well said. Like the first three paragraphs I liked, actually. The fourth, not so much. The fifth I liked. The sixth paragraph.
Can we go back to the fifth for a second?
Oh, okay, go
1,
ahead.
2, 3, 4. Yeah, the fifth one. Oh, my comment there was more having to do with the EIS. Should we, like, how do we determine the impact of 100% build out, and does that need to be part of the EIS?
Ooh,
In our
good
scoping?
question, actually.
Because that's, I mean, that's really the concern, is what would be the impact of 100% build out? Like, what does our island look like, and what resources get streamed?
So my first thought on that is that 100% build out is not necessarily something we have control over. You know, if we can't tell people they're just not allowed to develop their property if it's a developable lot. So this comp plan doesn't necessarily control whether or not build out happens. It's assumed that in every community, eventually build out will happen in time. It's, does this create a significant, does this plan do something that is going to cause a significant negative environmental impact? That's what we're looking for, things that can cause significant negative environmental impact.
All right, my counter to that would be, if we have 100% build out and we destroy water or some other resource, should we have done something more ahead of time to prevent the 100% build out?
I understand that question. I just don't know how you prevent build out.
Restrictions.
No, you can
So, I
do
mean,
restrictions,
yes.
but no matter what, if it's a buildable lot, unless you just ban building,
Mhm.
you're never going to completely block build out.
I'm not sure it's the
No.
question. I think the question is more of, if you build out 100%, what's the effect? But the real question is, as you let build out increase, what is the ongoing effect of getting closer to 100%?
I don't think the question is so much 100% build out, but also if you keep allowing small cottages to be replaced with McMansions, that has a larger impact than if you just allow for build out of small structures. So it's not just whether or not we reach build out, but what is the magnitude of our build out?
Yeah, that's true.
So,
I feel like this at least gives us a piece.
oh, it's
to
definitely
look at it
something that would
because
go in the EIS.
That was,
Picking up a bunch of flags.
because that was the
Yeah.
other piece for me, is like, okay, we get to 100% build out, we're fine, but then everybody doubles the size of their house.
Exactly, that's,
And like, so that's
yeah.
more than 100% build out, so I
Right.
feel like we just need to try and capture something.
Yeah,
So I
Yeah,
wanted
it would go
to,
in the EIS.
there's an EIS question in there somewhere.
yeah, so I wanted to, like, when we're talking about scoping, like, this is something that needs to be highlighted. Okay, all right, so keep going with what you have.
Oh, 6, is that 6 or 7?
Yeah.
Let's go back to 5 for a second.
Okay.
Go back to 5.
How do we protect 1 acre minimum zoning? Is that desirous of this plan, to protect it, to keep it?
It's already in here. That is our zoning.
It is.
1
Okay.
acre zoning.
Right.
There's no recommendation to shrink the size of a lot.
No, there's some talk of,
But here, let me finish, excuse me. Lessening, the last line, lessening more compact growth patterns that are typical in other areas. Do we want that?
No.
No, we don't.
So,
It should be more protective language, that we don't want that.
Well, it's not promoting that either. It's just stating,
That the on-site wells and sanitary systems requires a continued 1 acre zoning, which lessens more compact growth patterns that are typical.
Do we want compact growth patterns,
No,
which
no,
that
no,
alludes
it's
to?
saying that our use of wells and sanitary systems does that for
So
us.
Albert, are you suggesting that we have a positive statement in this paragraph? That those are good things? 1 acre zoning and the fact that the use of sanitary systems and on-site wells requires
1 acre
1
zone,
acre zoning, and that's a good thing.
yes. What I see is compact growth patterns,
You don't want that.
so I think what we should.
which I don't, which I don't.
Right, okay, so then we can take that out. So maybe what we say is,
That are typical in
The
other areas, I
continued-
don't,
maybe we just say the continued 1 acre minimum zoning is preferable to the compact growth patterns of other areas, or just say we should continue using 1 acre minimum zoning.
that's,
Something like
I
that.
I like that, just a simple,
Yeah. Keep it just a simple statement.
Should be at least 1 acre, because we do
Yeah.
have some acres on it.
Right. A minimum of 1 acre.
Let's see, that's 1 acre zoning.
And your reword.
I owe you this bit. I owe you the other bit too. Right.
Okay, you had some comment on,
Land use regulations have traditionally balanced public interests while maintaining property rights. Important paragraph. I just feel the way it's written. Shelter Island is a unique community. The island's tranquil, isolated environment, historically attractive residents who have a general spirit of individualism and a love for its natural beauty. You want to put both things equally on the scale. Not the individualism, property rights bit, but you want to balance it.
no, I think, feel the same way, Ben, about that. I think we should be emphasizing the interests of the public over the interests of individual property owners, really, in order to protect what we have.
I agree, it's kind of it's fortunate, language matters and it's important, but, individualism goes as far as it can until it starts messing with the next guy. And how do you balance those interests? And it's the age-old problem, and we shouldn't try to put a thumb on the scale by only mentioning one and not the other in the first sentence. And further down,
So wait, what was your
Oh.
recommended change?
after individualism, adding something like, and a love of its natural beauty,
Okay.
something like that.
Mhm.
Well, you can even go as far as saying, using the words public interest in there, but natural beauty works for me.
no,
Also, that last sentence, however, is important that zoning and other regulations are appropriately designed to better protect the most valued qualities. It's just, seems like a stupid change, but words do matter.
better that. Page 32,
Daniel Sylvester?
Nathaniel Sylvester, this fellow, the channel.
Yeah, and
He won't carry step.
Page 33, we have an unnamed, undescribed chart, or not chart, but,
yeah,
so I think we need to add a title to this, as well as define what the red and the, better, like, at least define what the red and black mean. I mean, it's a really hard to read
Yeah.
chart, which presuming early history was existing and then each,
It's essentially showing
Rack
the
is
growth pattern
add-on.
over time. So, so the first chart you have red signifying where there are homes built. And then that red turns into black in the next chart, and the red is new
Oh.
development at that period of time. And then that turns black, and then there's, the red is the new development in each one. So it shows just sort of where people were building at that point in time. And so it just kind of shows you how or where people started settling at different points.
so we definitely need to do like
So it needs more
better,
clarity.
yeah,
Yeah, this
description.
is so small that I don't think it's meaningful.
I think it
Like, I
deserves,
can't read this.
it deserves its own page.
Yeah.
Well, 6
Well,
pages. And how long is this thing already?
Well, I would start,
Oh, don't make it longer.
Yeah.
I would start with expanding it to one page
Okay.
and see if it becomes a little
Yeah.
bit more.
It's not meant to necessarily identify specific
Yeah.
properties, but to just show the trend over time of
Yeah.
where, you know, because people didn't really start living in Hay Beach until the 50s. You know, there wasn't a ton of development in that area, but it shows after,
Mhm.
you know, certain periods of time, people started building in other locations.
Yeah, it looks like from 1980 to 1999, it exploded.
Right.
Page 35, figure 2, and 40, figure 4. One is
I assume,
existing.
oh, sorry,
Go ahead.
that's,
Go ahead.
I assume it'll be okay, because every time I read through this, I find something else in chapters that we've already gone through.
Yeah.
So at the beginning of some of these sessions, I can say, well, back in chapter 3, I reread it, and this is,
Oh, yeah, no, because we
Okay.
need this
Yeah.
to, like,
okay.
be cohesive throughout the whole document. And then we also have work sessions set aside towards the end
To do
just go
just that.
back and like put it all together. So figure 2 and figure 4, existing land use, which just has single-family residential, medium-density residential, commercial, et cetera. And then developmental potential analysis. We've got some conflicting colors going, and like, I'm just trying to figure out a way to conform these a little bit.
For sure.
I think it did get fixed from an earlier draft to this draft with some of it.
Well, before you couldn't tell, like the colors were too close to each other. It was like different shades of green that just
Yeah.
sort of blended, so.
They went with different colors, but
Are you saying people are going to confuse?
I don't know, I
Mixed
just want
use
to
with
try to like
vacant.
look at it and say, okay, what have we got going on here and what have we got? I have to think about it some more, I just, I think the coloring's off, but since it's something that looks like it came from assessor's data and was self-created, should be able to play with it a little bit. I think what I'm hoping to see is, I'd like to see, I mean, the pink is good on figure 4, like vacant with developmental potential, the pink pops.
Right.
Like land use, the second paragraph. Current land use,
Page 34?
34, yes. The current land use data was reviewed by town staff to ensure up-to-date use of land. Who was that?
We cross-referenced it with the assessor's data. So we went to the assessors and the building department and just checked to make sure. And then we also used what we knew of what we were looking at, because some of the things like, for example, White Oak is now there, before it wasn't. You know, it's functioning as a business, it was a residence for a while. So that change hadn't quite been made on the map, but we went in and we made that change. It's a mixed use, it's an ag and it's a business. So certain things like that. You know, if we saw something on the map that we knew was wrong, we corrected it.
When did that get changed?
What?
When did White Oak get changed?
It's a commercial property and it wasn't marked as commercial on here originally.
I think it started really
So-
functioning post-pandemic.
Yeah, so it was just that
Assessor
the
Manor
old
Farms thing
data was wrong.
before it was White Oak.
Right.
Okay. We have that same problem on 37. If we're not there yet, we're not
Yeah,
there
no,
yet.
no, 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 I'm just, I'm thinking about it, I feel like, because I think they're two very important charts. Just being able to better see.
I mean, the red and the pink is really similar on the first chart, the existing land use. Mixed use and commercial is pretty close to the same thing.
Yeah. I'll try and put my finger on what's, what we are used to. It needs to be an overlay of some sort. Right, you had something on
27,
37?
It's hard to read it, and maybe I'm reading it wrong. The manor, is that the manor at A4 or AA, sorry?
It's AA, yeah, there's a side on the north of Manwaring that needs to have a red line.
Oh,
Yeah,
yes.
well, the north side of Manwaring all the way down to the manor property on the north side of North Ferry is all Biza.
No, it's not towards Northbury. No, the B zone is, I'll show you. It's this right here. It's not filled in correctly. It's this section here that should be
Yeah, that
red.
should be red.
Yeah,
I also think it goes,
I made that
it
note.
goes down to the
No, it
Quaker
doesn't.
Corner.
It doesn't because it's in our zoning map. It doesn't do that. I cross-referenced that with the assessor.
Hmm?
It didn't go that far.
All right, well, I mean, it's worth another look, because that was like my understanding of it, but I could be wrong. Especially when that easement was sold to the town down to the Quaker Corner. But we should just have another look at it, because I have a different understanding. But, I mean, we should just get it right if it's wrong. I'm not complaining about it, I'm just saying I'm not sure it's right.
A small squibble is we only really have 5 zoning districts in our code.
See, it stops at the four-way.
Yeah.
It does, okay.
I can double check the assessor's map,
Yeah,
but
because-
that's the way it's.
That is definitely not the way we approached it when we sold the easement. I think that in the zoning code, it was written that way in the code. Like I said, I could be wrong, but
I mean, maybe they changed it after you sold the easement, because now that it's no longer developable, they reverted it back. I don't know. But that's
one of
just
the
how it
reasons
is.
why they wanted to buy that piece was because it was commercially zoned. And they didn't want it commercially developed. And that's how we were originally approached. It's like, we want this because we don't want strip mall here.
This, just what the data says.
I'm just saying we should have a look.
Yeah.
If it's wrong, we should correct it, and if it's right, we should leave it alone. But that was never my understanding.
Okay,
You'll work on checking that.
yeah.
Yeah,
In page,
Ben's checking that.
oh,
No, I'm just-
36, oh, okay, go ahead.
No, you go.
oh, no, go ahead.
The town only has 5 zones.
Yes.
The Causeway is a overlay district,
And so is the near shore.
and the near shore is not mentioned here. It's later on, but it could be mentioned here.
It's mentioned right after the Causeway District. Well, no, the Causeway District is a district. It's just on the next page.
You're saying.
It's not a zone,
you're saying
it's an overlay district, like the near shore overlay district.
Yeah.
Just a, I mean, not a.
Are you saying we should change that?
No, he's just saying it's not correct.
It's just 5 zones that we have in the code, not 6. That's all. I mean,
Oh, does it say?
And mention that-
Oh, I
we-
see, I see, I see.
yeah,
I see.
we can mention the near shore overlay as well as the causeway in this section. The near shore is some area that we really want to protect. Or I think we should protect.
Businesses. So in here then, we are giving the Causeway District more.
Well, and the way this is written, Causeway is a separate and distinct zoning district.
Right,
We only have the overlay for the near shore.
right. Yeah, that's why it was written this way. It was just that when they wrote it, they named it a district, not a zone. So,
Because if you look at the Causeway District, it has its own bulk schedule, has its own use schedule. Near shore overlay just adds extra restrictions to the properties above and beyond the bulk and the use.
right, so it is its own zoning.
Yes.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Okay, so then the way it's highlighted is. Here, sure.
What did I miss?
Nothing, other than it's 6.
That's
It's still 6 zoning districts. It's just called the Causeway District.
Okay.
And then
got
near
it.
shore and peninsula are overlay.
So that's- Let me see.
Anything else in chapter 3?
Nothing's jumping out at me.
Robert?
I don't, one thing that kind of gnaws at me a bit, is that we don't really look at deed restrictions on applications now. It's kind of, we don't do that. And I don't know the ramifications of that.
Applications for,
At which applications?
Building, wetlands, things of that, we don't look at deed restrictions.
have they been?
Just in terms of build out, what can be done, that's all.
That's been widely used here in Champaign.
Deed restrictions?
Yeah.
There are some.
Particularly in the Heights, there's a ton.
That would make sense.
There's, there's 2 separate types of deed restrictions. There's ones that are imposed by the planning board or imposed by a town board approval, whether it's ZBA, planning, or town. So those are 2 separate and distinct things. The building department has been enforcing any town-generated, restriction on the property. But if it's one that was privately put into the deed, they have not, because number one, there's no requirement to provide a chain of title to the building department to see if there are any
They don't stand on
CNRs on the property. And also, we don't have standing to enforce it, so it's it's civil in nature. So that's a little history on that.
Whatever, I think it would
We're looking at deed.
really look at myself. We don't really know if a property's sold, if there's any restrictions on it.
Wouldn't that be part of Reed's review in doing a denial letter?
No, he'd only be aware if, again, whether a zoning board, planning board, or town board imposed a condition on the property.
Hmm.
you would be aware of those. But in a building permit application, he's not aware of any private CNRs that are on the property, whether it's in a deed or whether it's a companion CNR in the chain of title. Those things would have to be affirmatively brought to the building department's attention. And even then, we don't have standing to enforce. So if there is a violation, obviously, we shouldn't go ahead with it if it's brought to our attention. But that's something that is civil, and typically with like homeowners association, like I said, Shelter Island Heights, their homeowners association would bring an action to enforce a condition if it's being violated.
We don't choose to do them then, in essence.
Choose to do what?
The, covenants and restrictions.
No,
We do them when we issue wetlands permits and planning board approvals and
Do
zoning.
we do that
We've
now?
absolutely done them. So on the,
Okay,
yeah, I was gonna
Alright.
say like 42 Gardner's Bay Drive, we went and put a deed restriction on so they could no longer subdivide that property. It was 6 acres. And as,
okay, go ahead.
well, I was just saying, as part of the negotiation, we said you can no longer subdivide this. And they had to put that covenant on the deed, so that's in the town records.
Do we know if there's an existing property?
Enforce
It's not an application that there's a deed restriction on, that we didn't put on recently. No, we don't do that. We don't check it.
You're asking if we do a title search every time?
No, we
the
do.
building
If
permit gets an
the
application?
if a town entity issued a CNR, it's gonna be in the building department file.
Right.
So we check that. But if it's one that happened in like 1920, that there was some CNR in the deed, and it's not brought to, we would have to require a chain of title to be done on every building permit application, which would be very expensive.
So Stephen, for example, let's say the planning board processes a subdivision. The conditions of that subdivision would be in the building department records.
Yes.
So they would be there. So like down by Shorewood, there was like a huge parcel there that was divided into 5 4-acre lots. It used to be 20 acres. Each one of those parcels has a deed restriction that it can not be further subdivided. It has to remain a minimum of 4-acre lots. So because that went through the town planning board subdivision process, those notes should be in the file for those properties.
Yes, and there's also like wetlands permits, like a septic system needs to be installed within X, that's all in the building department file.
I mean, I'm sure if it predates a certain date, if it was a 1920s deed, it may not have that, may not be back there. But
Correct, because again, there's certain deed restrictions that are private and contractual in nature that we're not privy to.
So what are the ones we could be missing then? Some examples.
Again, like the Heights has a host of peculiar conditions and requirements. And again, and this isn't, just Shelter Island, no building departments ask for a chain of title for a building permit application.
yeah, no, that would be unique.
Well,
So,
Heights is a little bit different because, they monitor and they have the infrastructure to, take a look at every
correct, so it's
application.
brought to our attention
So those ones will get
as a
brought.
watchdog, yes.
So give me another example. I'm just trying to think of what we're missing, to Albert's point.
If there was a, let's say, an easement or something like that, put on someone's deed, we don't know that exists. And if it's a vacant land and they say, we want to build it X, Y, and Z, and build it over here, we wouldn't know if there was an easement on the property unless there was a chain of title required, and then we would see that CNR. We're not supposed to get it, again, that's private and civil in nature, that's something that if this person goes forward and wants a house built in an easement area, and it's not reflected in the survey, which we look at, then we would have no reason to know it was there, and then the person who was the easement holder or the benefit of the easement, they could bring a lawsuit. But but in the main, we do know of any CNRs that are imposed by the town.
It's back to chapter 3. Anything else? We'll be revisiting this chapter in essence when we go through chapters 4, 5, 7, 8, 9, 10.
Just one other thing, I just wanted, I did some quick research into it. Surprisingly, Mishomick is located in a nature preserve system, a Shelter Island Nature Preserve System. It was designated that. So there's, for them to want to build it or sell it, they would need town board approval and state approval. So to make any other use than what is permitted as a nature preserve, they would need permission of the town or New York State. Even if they wanted to sell it, they would need permission of New York State to do so. So there are protection, again, I won't get into it, but yes, there is.
We don't, is that it? We going over the chart there?
Oh,
Recommendations or? Or no?
In my notes, I had to my notes was to cross-reference as we go through the subsequent
Okay.
chapters.
Right.
But if you want to, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know, I went through them.
Yeah, it's kind of a problem, because how does this fit in with the vision statement? But we need to cross-reference it as we go.
It's just letting you know that these are the topics addressed in these chapters. So in chapter 4, it talks about strengthening the limits on density in residentially zoned areas. It talks about monitoring the effectiveness of the short-term rental law. It talks about considering allowing second-floor apartments above retail businesses in the B zone. Ensuring development is appropriately sized for sensitive shoreline areas. So it's giving you an idea of the zoning recommendations that are made in each of the subsequent chapters.
For 41C, they're also considering allowing for potential increase in density in business zones. So
Right, so you would go to chapter 4 and you'd learn more about that there. It's giving you a point of reference to know where the potential zoning changes could be and how to learn more about them.
And as we review each of these, if we make edits, we'll come back and
Right.
adjust this section. Unless you want to go through it, Albert.
No, we'll go back then as we go through.
Yeah, I mean, it would make sense to go through chapter 4 and then go back and look and see what Lisa's put.
So, in the summary of key findings. In the second one, Shelter Island has seen a steady increase in construction. I just want to go back and double check, like, the island is averaging 10 new houses per year. I just want to double check that since this calculation was done, it continued through. You know, that the number just updated. Also updating the average price for non-waterfront homes from 1.4 million, so I think that's to 2023 information.
Yeah, I mean, we can get updated information if it's available.
I like the first paragraph. Second paragraph, it just seems to be lacking comment about attainable housing, but then again, the third paragraph kind of addresses
Yeah.
that. But the last sentence of the third paragraph, current housing market conditions Shelter Island make it unlikely that for-profit developer, it's way negative. We're in the middle of this process now. We're trying to, through the Community Housing Board, trying to create an RFP and an offering that will be attractive to for-profit developers. They'll build it, manage it, but obviously it's going to take public money to do that. And that's the only way to do that. I'm not sure why the last sentence is so negative.
I think maybe it's more that they're not going to take the initiative on their own
Right.
without governmental intervention.
Right, well, we can say that because we're doing that.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm kind of saying we should update this to what we're currently doing.
Well, that's the next paragraph.
Okay.
I mean, the next one is all about the current housing initiative.
And that needs to be updated too, right? Another comment, update.
We
So-
also, before we leave the third one, attainable, we've got attainable, we've got affordable, attainable. I'd like to,
We were trying to make it all attainable,
Yeah, I
and I
think-
think it just got missed in certain places.
okay, I just wanted to make sure that there wasn't some nuance that I was missing.
Nope.
Evidently. The issue with paragraph 4.
Yeah. We should talk about what we're doing. We can take this paragraph, hand it over to the Community Housing Board and maybe have them rewrite it.
Well, I mean, the rest of the chapter goes in depth on this. This is just your key findings that we're working on it. So is there language that you recommend we change?
Sure.
I mean, it
Could
kind
it
of
be a s-
outlines,
Yeah, could it just be as simple,
What we're
which
doing.
some of which are currently being implemented?
Yeah, that's fine.
On page 40, oh, go ahead. On page 48, housing supply and type, second paragraph. I think that there's some references in, some coding references. I don't know where it's coming from, like, there are 28 cabins, CC2, standard pool houses, LR2. I have no idea what those references are, and I don't think they're needed.
I just wrote what?
Yeah.
they definitely aren't needed in there. They were the references based off the assessor's data.
Mhm.
Those are.
So if you jump to the first paragraph, it says housing supply and type title, then it goes on to talk about potential housing types as difficult to confirm an accurate number. Oh, never mind. Never mind.
Okay.
This is,
The discrepancy between the American Community Survey and what we pulled together from our data, we have a variance of 300 units. Is it illegal units or like, it's
There's no way to know.
like an almost 10% discrepancy
Yes.
that is troubling.
Yep.
So, yeah, I guess we can't find out from ACS what if they based it on.
Well, that's straight up census. So that 3,401 housing units is the census number. And then the assessment roll data shows that 2,607. So it could be people living in illegal apartments. It could be, people staying in accessory sleeping quarters. So it wouldn't be on the assessor's roll as a primary residence. It would be as one of these dependent structures, like a cabin or a pool house or an apartment. So it's part of it is the way that the assessors classify a structure versus how the census is classifying the structure. They use different qualifications.
Although we grabbed 200 garage apartments and pool houses.
Right. So, I mean, if you add all the things together, it gets closer.
But yeah, still
we
a
don't know if
discrepancy.
people are
Yeah.
actually living there.
Yeah.
How is this helpful?
Because these are our existing conditions. This is what we have to work with.
Yeah. I'm not sure if there's anything we can do other than to highlight it. In table 8, the town of Shelter housing units from the 2022 assessment roll, we have something called property class, which is meaningless to me. I'd like to get rid of it because we have property class description. And that way we can make the notes section longer and we can increase the type font on that.
Yes.
And I had a typo on 49, that even though it's just a typo, I just want to make sure, like, it's a huge typo. Underneath table 10, second sentence, in 2010, about 59% of homes were unoccupied. Should I, it's reading the table above? Reflecting the highly seasonal nature of Shelter Island.
Correct.
Sorry, where's that? Right there.
Yeah. Part 15, I thought could be a little crisper. On page 52.
Yeah, it's obviously gotten smushed, so.
Mhm,
We just go back to seasonal units and short-term rentals,
mhm.
because 49.
What page you on, 52?
49? Let's go back to 49 for a quick second. Seasonal units and short-term rental. Once again, it's just weird data that may not be meaningful. Property owners' tax bill addresses, for instance, I live here full-time, my tax bill gets sent to my accountant in New York City. So what are you counting? And I know a lot of my friends do the same thing. Or their accountant in Florida. It's just a weird chunk of data that may not make any sense.
The vacant is, yeah, that's just nobody's living in the house. It's unoccupied.
46% of houses are unoccupied.
Yes.
You mean like full-time, right?
No, I mean, like, they were not being lived in at the time that the census was taken. The people were living somewhere else, they weren't living here.
It's meaningless.
It's a tough piece of data. It's a tough problem to quantify in general, and this doesn't help. Like I said, I'm then, according to this, counted as a non-resident empty house. If they look at my property tax bill.
No, it was a different chart. So the,
Well, I don't know, I'm talking about what's written here. Well, your census,
well, the
count that.
number of, so chart, table 10 is occupied versus vacant, and that's based off the census data.
Right.
And then on page 50, that's the chart that you're misclassified as. It's just on island versus, you know.
Yeah. Well, what's the sort of the text, what the text says is that the plan uses census data from 2020, as well as location of property owners' tax bill addresses. It just leads you to bad data, that's all. And I'm not sure how it's helpful. But I'm not sure how to solve it.
Yeah,
I don't think it can be solved. It would take a tremendous amount of work to try to differentiate.
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, part of the attempt is to understand
So what are we trying to find?
how, well, what we're trying to understand is how many people are here and for what duration of time, because that then impacts, that has a number of different impacts environmentally. So if you have someone who's living here full-time, year-round, 24/7, 365, they're gonna have a different environmental impact than someone who only comes out for 2 months out of the year. So trying to determine exactly how much of a fluctuation we have in population throughout the year kind of helps us to determine how significant or what type of environmental impacts we're having. So, you know, we know that, for example, through anecdotal data in the summer months, people who live out in Silver Beach complain of a higher rate of saltwater intrusion, and of course, it's for a number of reasons. One, typically at this point in time, we're in a drought, that's not the case this year, but then you also have a higher draw on the aquifer during that period of time because more people are out for the summer. I mean, you notice the change just in traffic. So we know that there is a difference, we know that there's a change, and we know it has some kind of impact. Trying to understand maybe the percentage of people who's out here all the time versus 20%, 30%, 40%, 50% of the time, kind of helps us to have some kind of understanding of the impact that it's having. That, I think, is really the reason to do it, is to try to figure out how many people are on the island at any given time. So if you average it all out, what does it really look like on a daily basis? Like, we know in the summer, the numbers can be a lot higher, but I think that's just the attempt, is to try to understand truly how many people live in their house 365 days a year. And then, what is the impact of people coming and going?
When we're
But
reviewing.
that also makes, I mean, there are people that live here, long time shelter islands, who now in the winter months go to Florida.
Yeah.
How's that factored in here? It's a bad data set, so I'm not sure how we want to address it.
Well,
but-
it's trying to give some understanding of something that's almost impossible to nail down. I mean,
I would
that's
agree with
that's
it being
the intent.
impossible to nail down, yes.
But I don't think you can ignore the fact that 60% of our population is transient, or not here every single day. I mean, people are allowed to take vacation. You assume everyone's gonna take vacation and go somewhere for 2 weeks out of a year, a month out of a year. One would hope people get to go away.
We're going for January, February, March, or December through, that's different. Maybe if you look at the data and say something like you just said, which is 60% of our population is transient, that seems like
That's what the data is, that's what we're trying to show through the data, like what percentage of the population is transient. And so that's kind of what we're trying to look at to determine.
Can I ask a question?
No,
Just take that question.
when we get to the public hearing, or you can send us an email or in writing. I'm
Unless
not,
you're
I'm not
specific at this
opening, no,
point, Mike.
we're not opening up, I have something I wanted to say. Let me get my train of thought back now. In what we're trying to do with this, when I think of the environmental impact of this, and we're looking at going back to the 100% build out, I think that since when we look at permits and things, we always, people say, oh, but I'm only gonna be using my house, I have 10 bathrooms, but I'm only gonna use it for a month of the year.
There's only 2 of us.
So the impact on the aquifer isn't gonna be that great, but we always go with design flow when looking at like the BEAS analysis and things like that. So when we ask the consultants to look at the EIS, I think that even though we have some seasonal data here, I think that we should request in their assumptions that they assume that all homes are occupied, existing homes, before we do the build out at 100, year-round use. Because we cannot control how people use their houses. And so if we're looking to, and we're concerned about the worst case scenario on what 100% build out looks like, I think that we should make that as part of our assumption.
Right, I get that. I'm looking at this and it's like, what are the implications or ramifications as we go through the chapters attributed to these data points? Are they true? Or do they substantiate what the actions are? That's,
Yeah. I mean, what are we trying to say? So to your point, like if this is like bad data, and what does it do? It is something that I think, at least when we look at the environmental piece, we ignore this piece. And so leads to the bigger question, it's inclusion, yes. Existing conditions, kind of, but maybe some sort of caveat.
I like that comment. I think that's a good way to apply the murkiness of this. to take that to the next step, which I think is beginning to make sense to me. How do you address ADUs and, or maybe that's how you address it, by looking at it 100%, because we know it's not 100%,
Mhm.
but then they're ADUs,
Yes.
which, okay.
Right, so if you just assume every home is occupied, then you've covered that basis. For the ones that aren't,
Yeah.
someone might be in their apartment.
Yeah, so we end up using design flow, not what we perceive to be the usage.
Right. So just circling back to the mailing address thing, because I know that that was one of your, I think the goal there was trying to, you know, sort out transient from intransient. So, you know, people who have multiple or seasonal or multiple, you know, homes this may not be their primary. So by doing that, they were trying to determine, you know, what is kind of the percentage of people who might live in multiple places.
And there are a lot of, and
Yeah.
for instance, even if the house in Shelter Island is their primary, they may have a secondary house somewhere else. So,
Absolutely.
there are plenty of people who, someone I met with the other day, who grew up here, has worked in many positions in town government, but, you know, is now a snowbird
Mhm.
and is not here in the winter.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're on page 50. Second paragraph here, the lucrative nature of summer rental market, blah, blah, blah. It talks about $70,000 being some sort of average possible rent for the summer, but there's no citation for it. You know, is it true? It's anecdotal, we may feel it's true, but I'm not sure the number being in here is helpful. We can just simply say the rental market is lucrative and it's having an effect on availability because people can make a lot of money by renting their house. Or you can cite it if there's a study that says this. I don't think there's a real estate market study for that on Shelter Island.
I suspect somebody went on Airbnb and,
Yeah.
or want to talk to a real estate broker and said, what's your biggest one?
I'd just take it out.
Mhm.
Just take it out.
Yeah.
This history of the STR battle here is very long and very confusing. I don't know if you want to simplify
I
it or.
believe it was a long, confusing process. Amber, are you gonna have PTSD if you have to read that paragraph again?
No. I got through it without having any, so. Is it needed?
Or something shorter.
Yeah.
I don't think you need
Mhm.
3 paragraphs explaining what
Yeah.
happened.
Yeah, take a look at that. See if it's shortened.
State where we are. Because you can't really get to the end because you get bored and you fall asleep in the middle. So you don't really know where we are.
Mhm.
Because you've already turned the page.
Okay, so what part do you think we should cut out?
Yeah.
I'm looking to make hard edits here.
Okay.
Yeah.
Feelings are great, but I wanna know where we can cut.
Additional impacts on residents, okay, that's fine. Then after that, the next paragraph probably can kill, one after that you can.
Which one is
kill.
that?
wait.
Oh,
So,
as did many municipalities worldwide, and what's the name?
Fill that paragraph?
Well, the first sentence you can leave, but the rest of it you can go. And then there's a whole explanation of the back and forth. And just go to where we are now. You know, as many
okay,
municipalities
that part,
worldwide,
yeah, I
town of
see what you're
Shelter Island has enacted a short-term rental law. And now we have this law. that says. And the whole primary residence, non-private, it was super confusing.
Mhm. Yeah, I think I finally stopped explaining to people.
Made me feel if I want to rent out my guest house, I have to call Stephen Kyrie.
We're looking for cuts on page 51, talking about host compliance,
Wait, but who's compliant?
host compliance.
Page you on?
On page 51.
Host compliance.
Yeah, I mean, it's like prior to 2023,
Yeah, we
the
got
town
rid of that.
engaged a firm. Oh, you did it?
No, I'm just saying like we no longer use that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, the chart above it just says, you know, these are short-term rental permits issued by the building department. I mean, I guess something that it's,
Let's see.
that it wasn't. There were concerns that it wasn't accurate, but
We should know that, though, right?
well, at the time it was implementation, we were figuring out how to work with the company.
I mean, we can just get rid of that whole last paragraph
Yeah, that was
I
my
don't think we
initial
need it.
thought, yeah. We just go with
and
what
then
we
just
do
leave
with
the
that's hard
chart,
data.
yeah.
I think we've eliminated the page.
Thanks, now the rest of the page numbers might be right.
Exactly. See? Keep going back.
Yeah. This one out too. Housing prices and afford.
Yeah, I just had the CRISPR chart.
That's what just depressing.
Well, you know, it's super depressing.
Mhm.
Page 52, it still has the special permit for houses over 6,000 square feet. Just a correction now.
Oh, yeah, 'cause we just changed. Where? What
Paragraph.
Second column.
Yeah.
The variance.
I was gonna say revert to the code.
Requires an area variance for any.
It's a luxury item, though.
Tennis, pickleball, basketball courts, pool houses, pools, hot tubs.
Yeah, I want all those things. Give me all those permits. Need a permit for a hot tub?
Yes. Because if you're putting it on a deck or something, they wanna make sure that deck is structurally sound enough to hold the weight.
Wait,
And then also with the electrical, you need an underwriter certificate and inspections.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't have one. Asking for a friend. What did I write here? Oh, the Great Recession is at the bottom of page 53.
I missed that one.
Depending on your age. I missed the first one, I caught this one. I mean, I read this section and all I could think about is the town needs to buy more land now for attainable housing. That's what I wrote. So could we put that in here somewhere?
What a community housing plan.
I was gonna say, yeah,
It's-
incorporated by reference.
Because it really does, it's gonna,
Community housing plan is already part of a comprehensive plan, so it will be part of this.
because it's gonna bring into play our ability to bond.
Yes. So that's the page 55, talks about the housing plan, which should be attainable housing plan.
Yeah.
Why was it changed from community to attainable?
Oh yeah, that should be community housing, thank you. I don't know why it's.
My notes here are just about that the town needs to act, that's what it says. As well as the growing demand year round, and then it says, this is where the government needs to step in.
And so the housing plan is an appendix for this document, so it's in its entirety, it's included in here. And it, with all of its recommendations.
Okay. Is that in the back here, my copy?
No, probably
No.
not.
I'll get it from the website. It's a hard spell, 29.
Yeah, and wetlands applications fee won't take that much. Board member reports being condensed or pushed to next week. But yeah,
Oh, you don't have to do WMAT.
Right,
Last
because we
night,
did it, yeah.
that happened already.
yeah, no. Okay, goals and recommendations.
It appears that there's no.
Back to Albert's concern about minimum lot size and making sure it's strengthened. Goal 4.1 has strengthened limits on density in residentially zoned areas while allowing for potential increased density in business zones.
The last, before we jump to that, the last paragraph of, before the goals and recommendations, it talks about the community housing plan as defined below. I guess it's an appendix.
Page 56.
So it should be as defined.
Change the reference.
Oh, yeah, instead of as detailed below, as detailed.
Because originally we included a whole summary of it, and then we're like, well, we're gonna include the entire document, so that's redundant. Okay, so let's see.
There, the character.
Is detailed in the appendix.
4.1, do we need to update this, given we passed that piece of legislation on house size? I don't know, do we need to update this?
No, because this says establish a graduated limit on the size of a new house.
That's what
We
Megan,
got stuck there.
Yeah, we haven't done any proportionality.
Okay. Okay, we'll get it. Boy, big sticky here, what's this say? Check the limits on density in residential zone areas while allowing for potential increased density in business. What does that mean? mean, we definitely want to strengthen limits on density in residentially zoned areas.
So the community housing plan had a recommendation that where possible, look to put apartments over businesses in these zones. So like in the center here, you know, if you have a business on the bottom, apartment on the top, so that's what this recommendation is for.
I actually like that idea. Do we have, it leads to questions of infrastructure and zoning, I mean, but that's.
Well, that's
Before, right?
the
This is to
second,
change the zoning.
that's the second paragraph of that. It says, if infrastructure is in place, it may be reasonable to consider limited locations in business zones where additional housing types and densities may be appropriate. So it's all dependent upon appropriate infrastructure for that even to be viable. But it's stating that, you know, in the future, it may be a possibility.
Well, you know what, I'm gonna flag, by mentioning wastewater treatment facilities or public water. Does that mean it's in the plan and can be considered in the future?
What do you mean?
Well, this is a roadmap to the future, and
Right.
what's in here is what future town boards can act upon.
Even if it's not in here, future town boards could look at it and act upon it, whether or not it's in the comprehensive plan, if it's a need of the community that's being demanded.
Well, yeah.
Or if you have
So-
a mandate from a public health entity. You know,
Yes.
it's.
Our zoning code has to be married to this. But if
Right.
you have regulations outside of the zoning code, it does not have to adhere to this. So any zoning amendment or zoning change you're gonna do in the future has to be in keeping with this document. But any wastewater facilities or anything like that don't necessarily have to because it's not zoning.
So why am I doing this?
Well, it comes in later. Wondering if it should be mentioned here. We're gonna address it later, right?
What should be mentioned in here?
Oh, in this space right here.
Right. What do you want to mention in the space?
Well, just cluster system.
You don't want me to identify what infrastructure is?
Yeah,
Oh, I mean, sure, if you want to take out the examples.
sure, yes.
If infrastructure is in place, it may be reasonable to consider limits, sure,
Okay, that's fine.
that's, I don't mind, you can take that out.
I wanted to go back up a little bit.
Mhm.
If you go back to page 43 in chapter 3, where we have the zoning recommendation table,
Page 43, you said?
yes, page 43. So the first one that we reference is 4.1.c.
Yeah.
So we have goal 1, we have goal 4.1, and I presume C is the third
Yeah,
paragraph.
this is A.
So we need to do some,
I think it's just citing.
yeah, we need to conform this a little bit. So, and then also, I felt like 4.1A should be in 3. Because establish a graduated limit on the size of a new house, that's a zoning change. So why don't we have it in this grid? On page 43.
It probably should be. In current zoning restricts increasing density.
I mean, there's talk about, on 42, it talks about the need for flexibility in zoning for B and B1 zones. Isn't the flexibility already there with the current appeal process?
Well, I mean, technically,
Page 42, you're on page 42? Okay, say that again, Albert.
That the current appeal process for B and B1 would allow flexibility. We call out flexibility in the zoning for B and B1 zones, but it's already said in the appeal process, isn't it?
Which goal and recommendation are you on?
it's in the chart on page 43.
No, he said 42.
I know. Post-its are on page 4.
Where the heck, I gotta find it now. The first paragraph on the, under zoning issues and recommendations under economy,
Mm-hmm.
first paragraph.
Okay.
Flexibility in the zoning may be needed. I think we have that now, that's all, in the appeal process.
Okay. That's under chapter 5, so is that something you wanted to move to chapter 4?
No, it's the housing chapter 2. So this is, it's identified in both housing because allowing for second floor apartments in B&B1. I mean, but yeah, he's talking about in chapter 5.
Oh, in both 4 too.
Right, in 4.2, it has that, adding that flexibility. But then he's going to chapter 5.
Yeah.
So
So I'm not sure what the thing is.
here is one, yeah.
Are we going through this? The listing, the
Oh, no.
recommendations?
What I was doing is when we got on page,
Tie it back.
on page 57,
We're just going through the ones that reference chapter 4 on there.
yeah, so I was on page 57 in goal 4-1, first one. I was saying needed to be in the chart on page 43.
All right.
So-
4.1C? Is that what?
4.1A.
4A?
Yeah, I went back in time because
Okay,
we skipped over it.
So I think the reason that wasn't included in the chart is because it's not technically a zoning change, like a zoning change. It's a building code. It's a. not
No, we
really a
were trying
zoning
to,
change.
we were trying to put it into this, weren't we putting it into the zoning code?
Well, we moved it into the zoning code to make it an area variance for oversized homes, but a graduated limit, I mean, if we move it into the zoning code, yes. But the way it was originally defined, the reason why it wasn't in there is because it wasn't in our zoning code.
Right.
So that's why it wasn't a zoning, that's why it wasn't on the chart.
Mhm.
I'm saying you can add it to the chart because we moved it to the zoning code, but that's why it wasn't there originally.
Yes, I would like to move it there.
Yeah.
Because it's not, there.
Yeah.
Yes, okay. All right, so we're adding 4.1A.
What page are we on now? 58?
So I'm, as we go through the goals and recommendations for chapter 4, I'm just cross-referencing back to chapter 3 to make sure that we've incorporated what should be incorporated in that chart.
I'm hard headed for you, Meg,
Uh-huh.
in that
What page?
58.
All right.
Paragraph of first, strengthen limits on blah, blah, blah.
Uh-huh.
Existing zoning regulations. It is widely understood that IA systems and/or building sanitary sewers will help improve water quality by managing
Oh.
and treating waste. So adding IA systems and/or. While public sewers or water may ultimately be necessary in some areas, could be possible,
Mm-hmm.
would help to address water quality. Some residents have expressed a serious concern that, so eventually that's true. Okay.
So no, because what it's saying here is that because it's understood that building sanitary sewers helps to improve water quality, it's going on to say that public sewers are a concern for some residents because they're expressing concern that it could lead to additional density. If you add IA systems in there, it conflates the two and makes them the same thing, leading to added density concerns. That's why we left it out of there.
Because if you
Because,
keep it in the confines of the sentence, then it pulls out sewers in the next sentence. I mean,
sure, okay.
maybe, it's worth having a look at. You could be right.
That was the original confusion that people were having,
Mhm.
and that's why it got changed to what it is now.
And, because if you let it stand alone, it's kind of saying like, well,
I mean,
Like if we put in wastewater treatment, that would be great. But
Right.
some people don't like it. That's
right,
what it says.
which is accurate.
Oh, it's also
And
accurate to say that IA systems and/or wastewater treatment would improve water quality.
Right, but the degree is significantly different between the two. No. All right, so we'll add IA systems to her.
Okay.
I'm not sure, but, I mean, I'll reread this. now.
Yeah,
Yeah. I'll read it.
Okay. Anything else with goal 4.4-1?
Sorry?
Anything else with section 4 dash, goal 4-1?
Significantly less. Well, cluster subdivisions may have more individual lots of overall density.
A little bit of typo if you want it.
You're asking that in its entirety, 4.1, all of the paragraphs? Where are
Yeah,
you?
I want to do it's 3:20, so we have a hard stop at 3:30, so what I wanted to do
Okay.
was just like stop at goal 4, like once we go through 4.1. I'll have to pick up 4.2 next.
Establish a graduated limit on the size of a new house,
Mhm.
knockdowns, whatever. I will reiterate again that I would like to see a specialized land planner and zoning attorney evaluate all the ramifications of what we do, what's done. I think we need some expertise to really look into that.
Will you
We don't really understand.
Will you draft something that we can look at to include?
is there specific language you want to change in here or add?
I'd just like to add that in.
So if you could draft something first.
Okay. Illegal conversions.
Mhm.
I mean, we know that basements are refinished as living space. Should we address that in the square footage? Does that need to be addressed in the square footage of a house, allowable house size? To account, to know if they do it, it's already in what's allowable.
That's what's in here.
We didn't change that in our code
No,
section.
but it's the recommendation.
It's the recommendation, okay.
It's finished up there.
So we're stopping at 4.
And
Yes.
on strengthen limits on density in residentially zoned areas.
Mhm.
If public water and wastewater systems are built, in essence, the Suffolk County Department of Health sanitary code goes away if a future town board wants it.
As a limiting factor, so then we have to keep
So
our
then it's our
zoning
zoning
code.
code.
Keep that in, yes.
Keep what in?
The Suffolk County Department of Health code, the sanitary code,
Well, you can't.
that limits density.
That it won't apply. So what you need to do is in the zoning code, make sure that your 1 acre zoning stands.
Okay, that's all, I mean, it just
You
follows
can't
that, that's
make
what I'm,
Suffolk County Department of
Yeah.
Health code apply to something it's not gonna apply
no,
to.
but that's what I'm looking for.
You wanna
Yeah,
keep 1 acre
keep
zoning.
1 acre
Yeah.
zoning, yes. We don't really recognize, in short-term rental law, we don't really recognize LLCs.
In
Who
what
rent
way?
it out, multiple people, how many times? I don't think we do that, do we?
It applies to everybody.
LLCs?
Yeah.
You do?
Yeah.
Is there tracking? Okay.
Yes,
If they come in for a permit.
correct.
Right, and then if we,
Well, and then if we find them online renting the same property multiple times, then you can track them down and cite them.
or it's reported,
Or, yeah,
then code enforcement follows up.
right.
Okay, so we will stop there, so we will have to add
Okay.
pages to next week's work session to continue on. Any comments from the public, please send them to us in writing, email, grab one of us. Take them. Before we close, okay, so wetlands application fee.
Yes.
Right, and we just took it back from planning board, so the planning board schedule had in their fee chart, wetlands, the application fee was $1,000. We need to set something for under town board fees, the next town board meeting. So do we want to keep it $1,000? Do you want to think about it?
Are you suggesting we make it more?
I think we need to look at it. I think we need to look at what planning board has spent to review the
I was
wetlands
just about to say, I want to
applications
see what our costs are.
Yeah.
and take that into consideration.
Yeah, so I just think about it, we'll do a little bit more digging.
Because it was expensive.
Yeah, especially because we are going to, like, we want to have an outside engineer come in and give us recommendations on every application, so there's going to be costs associated with that, so. That's one thing. So we're not going to do board member reports, the only thing is that, I know in executive session last week that I missed, and therefore couldn't watch the tape, you went over the Optimum contract. So I'm gonna put that.
You didn't go over, I just briefed them on it.
Okay, but we need to keep moving on this, so we'll put it on the agenda for next week. We can put the contract out on the website, I think,
Yeah.
so that if there's public comment on it.
And it'll go to a hearing, right?
Yes.
Does it?
No, it goes to resolution.
Resolution.
It's just a contract that authorizes.
In the franchise agreement,
Yeah,
there will be a public hearing
it does? Oh,
Yes.
Oh,
pursuant to federal regulations, it has to go to public hearing.
okay, because most contracts don't.
Yeah, correct. No, this is a little bit of an announcement.
Oh, okay, all right, so, okay, then it'll go on regular work session. Okay. All right, that's it. So
All right.
make a motion to go into executive session for interviews and then the employment history of 4 individuals. Yeah,
A second?
Second.
thanks. All in
Third.
favor?
Aye.
Thank you, everyone.